Do this.
All right. I would like to welcome Gil Nevo to the Amani Experience podcast. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. We're happy to have you here. We do a geographical check-in when we first start. So tell the listeners where we are right now.
We are in beautiful downtown Los Angeles.
Yes. Downtown Los Angeles. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in LA. I grew up on the west side, Fairfax, Beverly Hills area, and moved to the east side. Lived almost all my life on the west side, and then moved to the east side about 5 years ago.
Got it.
And that was a revelation.
A revelation in which way?
When you live on the west side, you don't go east.
No, you don't. But here we are, east side.
Yeah.
So after you finished high school, you went off to UC Santa Cruz, and then you stayed there for a little while, and then talk to us about how you made a decision to leave Santa Cruz and start your career pretty much right then and there.
Well, that's not quite how it went.
Okay.
It's much more circuitous. I mean, you saw all the things I do.
Yes.
The road I took to do all those things was probably just as circuitous. I actually left Santa Cruz after a couple of years and didn't know what I wanted to do, had no clue. And I was bumming around Los Angeles. I was doing some artwork. I was going to Santa Monica College, trying to figure myself out, and ended up going back to Tel Aviv, where my family had moved to while I'd been in college. They moved back. So we're originally from Tel Aviv. We lived in LA for about 18 or 19 years, and then they moved back. And I stayed here. I went back to visit them. I was looking at art schools. I was trying to figure out where I was going to go. And I ended up running into somebody who basically, to make a long story short, offered me a job at an animation studio cleaning and inking cells. So at the time we were still doing animation on cells, on plastic,
Right.
drawing, painting on the other side. So I went from college to doing that. I did that for a year, and I was an apprentice under this guy, and I was doing exercises and doing animations and doing cleaning and inking. And then the Israeli Armed Services called and said, "Oh, you've been here for a year. You need to make a decision. If you're going to be living in Israel, then you have to do what everybody else does, which is go to the army." And I had a decision to make, either leave the country or stay. And so I stayed. And I ended up going and hanging out in the Air Force for a couple of years. And then I left Israel. Then I came back to LA, stayed here for a couple more years, still trying to figure out, now, I was back at square one trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was a party promoter. I was big into the rave scene. I threw, a party that was called Higher Ground, that we'd go to the desert every full moon we did this for 3 years.
Okay.
Promoted parties around LA and Hollywood. And then after a few years of that, got back into animation. And I studied 3D animation, which was just coming up at the time. I studied a piece of software called Power Animator, which later became Maya. Okay. And through those studies and some very fortuitous dealings and luck, basically, I got an interview to work on the film South Park, which at the time was just a year into its life, but it had already had a lot of success. I'd never even seen the show, but I got an interview. I kind of nailed it, luckily, even though I had no experience and very little training, but I had my confidence and a little portfolio, and I got my first career job on the movie South Park,
right.
Working for Paramount.
Okay. Going back to when you were in the Air Force, did you actually have to enter into any combat while you were there in the 2 years?
No, so I was actually what is called, I'm translating now because I know all the titles in Hebrew. I don't know them in English.
Okay.
But
you can say
it was a bomb. I was a bomb technician.
Oh, okay.
So basically, I fixed, these 2-ton bombs that sit on the wings of airplanes. So it was my job to fix them, to maintain them, the glorified bomb janitor of sorts.
Okay.
So the thing in the Air Force is the only combat people are really the pilots.
Yeah. Okay.
Everything is support.
What did that experience kind of teach you that you still use today in your kind of business and life?
I think patience.
All right.
Yeah, I think there's an element of sort of giving up control and just knowing that it's going to end. You know, like, because when you're in the army or the military, your life isn't really in your control. You get told what to do, you have a commander, you know, you're 20 years old. Your life is basically being dictated to you. So as a creative, as a free thinker, a lot of people are not comfortable in that situation. But what I learned is the best way to deal with that situation is to actually quiet the mind. I mean, it's almost meditative, and go, you know what, this is what I'm doing right now, and it's okay. I can do what people tell me to do because that's what I signed up for.
Okay. And as you were working with South Park, you then started your own studio called Nice Studios. What inspired you to make that change?
Well, it's funny. So your podcast is about corporate, you know, leaving corporate, or partly about that.
Yes,
right?
yeah, definitely.
And the only corporate job that I've had is South Park.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting because it's not your typical corporate job. It's still very much creative. It's very much a unique situation out there in the market. But when you're working for South Park or a show like South Park, it is very corporate. It's not your show. You know, the big arm of Comedy Central and Viacom and whoever you're working for is still sort of dictating your life. And so I left because South Park was all engrossing. When we were in production, it would just cut me off from all of the things that I really wanted to do, which is my own projects, my own creativity, painting and making art and making film. And so I left because of that, and I started my company because I did a couple of years of freelancing and realized that as a freelancer, I was very, very far away from the source of the funds, the source of the money.
Right.
And so the issue with freelancing is that it's like the trickle down theory. It's like the money comes from the brands, and it goes to the agency, and it goes to the producers, and then it goes to the freelancers. And by the time that you get your cut, there's nothing left, and you're the one who has to do all the heavy lifting on a job. So I figured I'd be getting closer to the source with having a company.
Okay. And then from there, you still have that company, and recently, less than a year ago, you started kind of your new branding company. So tell us about your decision to kind of add that to your repertoire, and what does that company do for people now?
So one of the things I discovered having my own company is, as a small business, there are a lot of challenges to getting new clients, marketing, building your own brand. And you don't realize that when you're when you're working in advertising, you work for a lot of big brands. And your responsibility is to be creative and to create assets. But you're not the one who actually has to bring in customers. When you have your own business, you do. And so that discovery was like, opened me up to a whole new world of small business, brand strategy, and marketing that I fell in love with. And so what I'm doing with Brand School is I'm taking all the stuff that I've done. So I've been a creative, I've done film and directed film shoots, and done animated projects and posters and artwork and illustration and basically everything under the creative umbrella. And I'm kind of taking all that stuff and helping companies package themselves and create, I guess it's the art of their company. The brand is the place where you can be the most creative, where you can stand out and be unique in the market and bring your own flavor and your own personality. It's where you can really express yourself. So many of the things that we do as small businesses kind of are commodities, right? Like, anything that a creative does, whether it's photography or graphic design. There's a lot of photographers out there. There's a lot of creative graphic designers out there. How do you stand out? How do you create your own unique thing? And the work is part of it. Definitely, you have to be the best. You have to really work to be the best at what you do. But you also have to bring some intangible benefits, which is, a personality, a unique style, something that makes you stand out, where people go, we don't need a DJ, we need you.
Yes. All right. Now, I've read that you have said that you can save an entrepreneur years of work by working with you for 1 or 2 days. How do you accomplish that?
I did say that. And it's true. It's a bold. It sounds like a bold statement when you put it that way.
Let's hear it. I believe
It's
you.
true. No, it's true. Well, so the thing is, a lot of people work for a long time without that unique thing. So there's a sort of place you can be in where you've done what you're doing for anywhere from 2 to 10 years, and you've had some success. You've done okay. You've paid your bills, right? But then at one point you realize, okay, am I doing this just to pay my bills, or am I doing this to go beyond? Am I doing this to grow? Am I doing this to build something? What is my real motivation? And when you look at marketing or taking your service out there, and you try to go, okay, how do I stand out in the market? And you realize, oh, well, I'm a photographer. Then you realize you need that thing. You need that unique thing. You need the unique value proposition or whatever you want to call it, and then you don't have it. You've been doing it for years without it. And so I can take people really quickly from sort of being a service or a commodity to becoming and thinking like a brand, and showing businesses what that actually means, because a lot of people have an idea of brand, but they don't see it in the big picture. They don't see how every action that they do for their business is a part of an overall brand. And when they start to see that, when they start to see a core message and a purpose that's bigger than everything, and then every activity below is an expression of that brand, then it changes everything for them. It changes how they talk about their business, how they communicate. It changes what they tell people about the business, and it opens new possibilities for different extensions of that, right? Different services. So instead of telling somebody, I'm a DJ, now you're telling somebody, I'm a thought leader. You said this, I'm just pulling from your words, but, oh, I'm a thought leader, and I happen to DJ and do this and do that, and all of these are an expression of what my bigger brand actually stands for.
Exactly. Great explanation. Thank you. If you were going to summarize yourself, where you are today in 30 seconds or less, how would you summarize yourself?
Live by design, not by default.
Excellent, excellent. And just kind of as a good segue, in your opinion, because you work with numerous, hundreds, thousands of creative professionals, what is important for creative professionals to succeed in today's business environment?
Honestly, I read that question, I thought of it, I heard some of the responses from the other podcasts that I listened to. The real answer, I think, is you have to want it. There's no trick, right? You have to put in a lot of work. You have to get mentors. You have to brand and message and market properly. You have to be really fucking good. Can I say that? You have to be really fucking good at what you do. But you have to want it. That's the most important thing. You've got to be willing to, go through the muck and the mud of figuring where your value lies. And as a creative, that's the hardest thing to do. Because what is the value of your photography? What is the value of your DJ? How do you encapsulate that? How do you communicate that powerfully? So you gotta want it. You gotta be like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm gonna figure it out until it works.
Why do you feel that entrepreneurship is difficult?
Who said it was difficult? No, it's entrepreneurship. Look, you're responsible. You're accountable. The buck stops here always. So yeah, you're always responsible for your business and your livelihood and your income. And there's no days off. When you go to a job, you can take a day off. You can be like, I'm not feeling, not even, you can mentally you can be there physically and take a mental day off and be like, look, the ship's gonna go anyway. I'm a little off today. I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna take a long walk outside. If you do that as an entrepreneur, but you'd still do that as an entrepreneur. It's just that you're doing it on your own time, I guess.
Yes, your own time, your own dime.
Yeah.
You've had a very illustrious career. You've done a lot of cool things. You've created several companies. What would you consider to be the turning point of your career?
There's so many turning points. I think my main turning point was when I got the job at South Park. I think that would be when I went from being, a a little stoner kid who is throwing parties and partying himself a lot and having fun and, you know, living this kind of, I don't know if debaucherous isn't the right word, but living a life of, you know, just for the moment and for joy, and realizing that that's not for me, and that I want to do something creative. I want to do something with my talents. I felt more talented and capable than what I was actually putting out into the world. And so taking that interview at South Park, everybody there who interviewed had a reel and an animation reel, and I had like a little portfolio of drawings. And I literally willed that job because I was so tired and done with what I was doing. And I didn't have the most experience. I didn't have my college degree. Everybody there was coming from UCLA animation programs and stuff like that. And I just basically came in as if from the street, and kind of willed that job to happen. And I think that was a turning point.
Excellent. Who are some of the creatives, artists that you look up to, that you kind of like to follow what they're doing, and kind of maybe they're virtual mentors for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't expect that one. Man, there's some amazing artists out there that I really admire. There's a photographer named Dave LaChapelle, who's amazing. There's an artist that I loved when I was, I think, 13 years old. His name is Vaughn Baudet. Okay. He is a genius. You know, and he did his own thing. I think I respect artists who do their own thing, like Quentin Tarantino. I know that's probably, not everybody loves what he does, but I respect artists who went out there and didn't try to fit into the norm, but had their own little world inside their head, and they put it out there, and they go, look, this is valid, this is true. This may not be for everybody's tastes, but there's validity in my creativity and my expression, and I'm gonna put it out there regardless whether it gains success or not. Vaughn Baudet is this amazing artist who lived in the 70s, who died really young, but he made a huge impact on a very small subset of people, graffiti artists in particular, and some underground people. But the world doesn't know who he was, but he was a genius, and he just did his thing, and I think that's beautiful.
Why do you love what you do?
Because creativity is freedom. And, you know, we're all, you know, we can't be free in the physical plane all the time, right? We have bills, and we have the limitations of our bodies and where we live. But in our minds, that's where we can be free. And creativity is the practice of expression, of allowing your mind to go where it wants to go and exploring what that looks like and what that feels like. And so I think creativity is kind of, if there's anything holy in the world, I don't believe that there's anything sacred, but if there's anything holy, I think it's creativity and the ability to express yourself.
For creatives that get stuck or they kind of hit a rut, what kind of advice, what have you done in the past to kind of get out of a rut or kind of refill your cup, so to speak?
A few things. First, get out into nature and travel. Like, that is the number one. If you're in a rut, just go out there and see the world. Take a week, take a month, it doesn't matter. Just go somewhere that you've never been and just be there. And then the other is cultivate a practice of non-judgment. So I think a rut is really a loop, right? It's a creative loop that's not resolving itself. You're thinking, you're not doing, you're thinking, you're not doing. The way to get out of that loop is to stop looking inward and not judging yourself, not judging your actions, not judging your history, not judging your output, and just moving forward one way or another.
Nice. What is something that scares you?
Nothing.
Fearless.
Nothing. Sometimes I get vertigo.
Okay, we'll count that as the answer. Now, your industry, both industries, kind of any industry that you're working in now, is still very crowded. How do you rise above all the noise and distinguish yourself from the competition?
I think two things. One, create a unique offer. So take what's being done, look at the landscape, and just do it a little differently. Find your own take on it. Find a take on it and be able to back up what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. So for example, a lot of brand strategy. So what I'm doing with brand strategy with Brand School is I'm going in and doing these branding workshops. And the reason I say I can change your business in a day or two is because I'm there with you and we go hand in hand into the pit and we work together to create the brand. Most strategists or branding people, that's not what they do. They come, they listen to, they ask you a few questions, then they go back and they start to interpret the brand they want to, the way they want. And what I'm bringing to the table that's unique is a process that works with you, where I'm the guide, so that by the end, you as a business, it's your brand. You've been there the entire time. You've seen how it developed from, the seed to the final output. And so you own it, you understand why, and then you can implement it better. And we don't have to do back and forth because once we're done, like you've been there. You've been through the process. It's as if you're sitting there in the room with somebody actually crafting and building. And so that makes a huge difference, to the kind of success that a company can have. When people see that that's powerful, then they want to work that way because nobody's ever let them in on that process. So it's a learning experience. It's an experience, like you get to work with a creative. So that's it. So I'm creating a different offer. So that's the first thing is do something that people aren't doing. What was the question again? The other thing
was just how do you rise above all the noise and distinguish yourself from the competition?
Yeah, so create a unique offer.
Yes.
And then infuse your personality. If you're a small business, put yourself in there. If you're funny, be funny. If you're serious, be serious. If you're listening to heavy metal and or like goth, then put goth in there, right? There's always enough people out there who will resonate with your personality and what you do.
For creatives that are maybe fledgling, neophytes, new, and they're scared, and you spoke about how you're fearless, you're not really scared of anything but vertigo, but for people who are scared to even get started, but they have talent, how would you help them kind of at least take that first step?
Take a really small step. That's the first thing, is understand that, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Yes, sir.
That's it. So it's like, you want to go 1,000 miles. That first step is just 6 inches in front, 1 foot in front of the other. So pull back the ambition and break things down into their steps and take the absolute smallest step that you can take. If you want to be a professional illustrator, just draw one thing. Just draw it and send it out. Take the process. What is the process of doing anything, right? If you want to be an illustrator, you draw, create a portfolio, you send it out to people. So just do one drawing, send it out to one person. Take that, create the minimal viable product from what you're trying to do, and just do that and fail at it, and then do it again and again and again. Small steps.
You spoke about failure, which leads us right to our next question. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
I've never failed. Only done 1,000 things that taught me a lesson. Or what's that? Just tried 1,000 things that didn't work. Yeah. Failure. I think failure is a mindset. I think that we fail a lot more than we allow ourselves. Our ego doesn't allow us to sort of see failure all the time. I mean, I guess some of us are wired to see everything that we do as a failure, and some of us are wired the opposite. But we protect ourselves. Our ego protects ourselves from seeing failure. But we fail daily. We reach out to somebody who doesn't want our product. We make a call and somebody doesn't call back. We meet somebody at a networking event and they don't give a shit about what we're doing, right? Failure is everywhere. So I think with every failure, you just need to accept it and go, okay, that was a little failure, but that's a good thing because now I know, now I can tweak, now I can change, now I can see what doesn't work. So I think just seeing failure as an opportunity is important. I'll tell you, one thing comes to mind, specific. Pick a good team.
Okay.
So I think if there's one thing I've learned is make sure you're working with the right people. Because if you're not working with the right people, it could be disaster. So pick your partners, your team members, people who are going to be with you for a long time wisely.
Do you have a specific example maybe when you picked the wrong team and ended up maybe hurting you or stumping your growth?
Yeah, well, I've had teams in the past on a project where it was a great project, but everybody had a different goal. And at the end, when it was time to really take the project across the finish line, everybody wanted to go different directions. And there were no great systems built in for how to deal with that and how to make decisions. And a great project that had a potential to be a multi-million-dollar project completely fell apart because we couldn't get on the same page. So I don't want to go too much into the details of that project, but I'll just say this, be very careful about who you pick to work with and make sure that you have guidelines in place for when the team doesn't work out or when people want to do different things, because eventually they will.
Pick a good team. Great advice. Now, you've worked on several movies, you've done lots of work that has received recognition, awards, therefore you get critics, or haters as we call them. How do you handle your critics?
I don't know if I've had critics or haters, to be honest. Like, I don't think I've had that kind of, I'm not a celebrity. I don't think I've actually had critics myself, but I'll tell you, when you're a creative, everybody's a critic.
Yes, sir.
Everybody's got an opinion about your work. Ooh, you should do this. You're like, okay. So, I think handling any critic is like anything else. First of all, take it with a grain of salt, put a filter, and don't ever judge yourself. So, okay, you can hate me or you can like me, but you know what? At least you saw me.
Definitely. Tell us about the darkest time of your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
Darkest time in my life was when I was in high school. I was a freshman in high school. My dad passed away. And it was very sudden. There was no warning. And we literally went from, up and coming family, immigrant family, like making our way in the world, climbing the social ladders or the socioeconomic ladders, to, being dead broke, having to have people like renting out any extra space in our house. Suddenly it went from some kind of order, right, to chaos. And right during high school, like my freshman year of high school, which was probably a weird time as well. So I think that was the darkest time in my life. And it was so dark, I don't even remember. I was in shock through high school. And it kind of sent me on a strange trajectory for many years of trying to figure out who I am and what I want to be. And I'll tell you, I don't know if you're going to ask this, but the learning, ultimately, the biggest learning that came from that many, many years is this. So because my dad died and I was thrust into chaos, I was always very independent. I just became my own person. I'll take care of myself. Nobody's going to take care of me. And I didn't know how to ask for help and how to develop mentor relationships in particular with men. And because I just forewent the whole father figure thing and just said that doesn't exist anymore. And so one of the things that took me many years to learn, and I'm still learning, is how to find and create mentor relationships with people who have been there, who have done that, and who can help you along.
So what have you done currently, or how are you growing that muscle, so to speak?
through networks.
Okay.
So, I've built networks. I've become friends with people who are older and more successful. I've allowed myself, I had to really stamp down my ego because I took care of myself that whenever I meet somebody who could potentially be a mentor, I'd always try to elevate myself to that level and never never give them the respect that I think they deserve. And so I learned to kind of approach things differently and give people respect and honor people's accomplishments, and honor people's experience, and approach things with a lot more humility.
Through your experience, like life, and then getting through that entire time period in your life, and now where you are almost out, not to diminish what you do, but you're like a coach, you're like a mentor to people who come to you for branding help. How has that affected your perspective when people look to you for mentorship?
I love that role. And I think because I didn't have it, I really enjoy that role. I enjoy being that for people, being able to use the knowledge that I've gained in the creative field to help people. This is very fulfilling and satisfying to see people learn from my experience, take things to heart, and also see people grow and progress and see them living their potential and really living their creativity.
Yeah, your answer doesn't surprise me, so great. And this is kind of an ironic question next, like, who was the most influential person for you growing up?
Influential? Oh, that's funny. I'd say that's a really hard thing to answer because I took what I took from different people, but I never developed, I never developed those mentor relationships. So I kind of pulled stuff from books. So the most influential, I think, people in my life have been authors and artists. Right. I think those are the people that, that I look to, that I took example from.
Which authors come to mind?
Well, I think of, the great filmmakers for some reason that pops to mind, like the Scorseses and the Tarantinos and, Tony Scott and Ridley Scott and some of these people who directed incredible movies. I think of artists like Von Bodé is one of my favorite, and Robert Williams and Frank Kozik and Ed Big Daddy Roth, and there's so many. I love Robert Crumb. People who I'm big into underground art. Yeah. So people like that. Yeah.
Good list. What do you find easy to do that your friends find hard to do?
This was an answer that I, from the last the podcast that I listened to with Jamie J.
Jamie J. Yeah.
Wait, say the question again.
So, what do you find easy to do?
The same answer as him. He said, create. I create, right? I'm always creating. There's always something. Some of it sees the light of day, and some of it just stays in my loft and hangs out. But I think that I can take an idea and make it a reality. I think that's one of my, whether it's a business, whether it's a work of art, whether it's music, I can make shit happen.
Great. Now, when you were 21, were you in Tel Aviv or were you still here in LA?
I was in Tel Aviv.
So you were in Tel Aviv. So we're going to go back and talk to 21-year-old Gil.
Mm-hmm.
Give him some advice based on what you know now. What advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
Mentors. Get mentors. Accept mentors into your life and start to see the world through the eyes of people who've experienced it, who have done more than you, who've had more success than you. Don't be so fucking hard-headed, and don't try to do it all on your own.
Yeah, we can't do it alone. Definitely can't. What's the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
That's it.
Yeah. All right, I figured.
I'm literally. I swear to God, I learned that lesson 3 weeks ago. No, no, it's been a few years, but I'm in my 40s, and that's a long time to go without that lesson, in my opinion.
But at least you've learned it and are putting it to practice.
Absolutely.
So respect to you. Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? For example, my sentence is, I love to help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ. What is your sentence?
I think it goes back to that quote. Live by design, not by default. Be creative in your life. Use creativity as a tool to gain freedom, to express yourself better, and to build a life that's not normal.
Excellent. What is one new habit that you've added to your daily routine in the past year or so that has been most beneficial?
So this is something that I learned from JP Morgan, who you also interviewed. Writing down a daily mantra it's the habit of changing habits, right? So it's basically, how do I change? We all have a lot of habits. In particular, we have thought habits, which are really the killers. Okay, so some people smoke and some people do this, but the thing that really stops a lot of people is the internal kind of thought habits, how we think about ourselves, how we judge ourselves at certain moments, how we act in front of people in ways that we don't want to and then kind of regret it, the way we communicate. So the way to break those habits is to create counteractive mantras that remind you how you want to be and how you want to show up in the world. And I think that habit has been a big game changer over the last few years.
How has that habit helped you with rejection? Because as creatives, we get rejected more often than we get accepted in terms of our work, our sales pitches, things like that. What do you do so that you don't let rejection kind of eliminate your growth and achievement?
I think you need to separate yourself from the work, and just know that you're not going to affect everybody, and just be 100% okay with that, and separate your ego from that. Do it however you can, but do it it's about noticing, right? So if you notice yourself hurt inside because somebody rejected you, you need to right away notice and then go, stop. That's not reality. There is no real pain here. Somebody didn't like it. That's okay. It's accepted. It's not a judgment on who I am. And you need to just build that habit.
Nice. Good advice. We're really big readers on the Amount of Experience podcast, voracious readers. Notice you got a lot of great books around your office and your home already. If there was 1, 2, or 3 books you feel people should stop what they're doing right now and start to read them immediately, what books would you recommend?
So sometimes the smallest books are the best books. I have a few in front of me that I love. There's The War of Art.
Stephen Pressfield, yes.
Which is just fantastic. If you're stuck, you're feeling resistance, that's a great one. There's It's Not How Good You Are, It's How Good You Want to Be. That is an amazing book for creatives. That you can see it's really small.
It is.
But it talks about some very basic, it's kind of geared toward advertising people, but the advertising world is an intense world. It's if you can succeed in advertising, you can basically succeed in anything. So there's some great gems in that. And then the Tao Te Ching, which is an amazing book, just reminds you to flow and be in the moment. And you can open up any page of that and find some wisdom.
Yes, you will. We're going to add all these books to the show notes. Now, you're a big baseball fan? Sports fan?
I'm a big basketball fan.
Lakers?
Okay. I love basketball. Lakers are my team.
Okay.
But I just love basketball.
So we're going to do a little throwback. We're going to go back to the Forum. So for a game, the Lakers were playing at the Forum, the fabulous Forum as they used to call it.
Oh, I was there.
And Gil is walking out to the court as they introduce to you. What song is playing as you come out on the court?
Oh man, so weird. This is the weirdest. I don't know why this song is coming to mind. It's Deeper Shade of Soul by Urban Dance Squad.
Okay.
Do you remember that song?
I do not, but we're going to put it in there.
You're going to put it in there.
Excellent. Tell the people how they can reach you, how they can find you online, social media, website.
www.brandschool.live, Instagram, Gil Nevo or brandschool.live, and LinkedIn, Gil Nevo. And definitely feel free to reach out to me anytime if you want to talk about creativity. Like, I'm open. I'll have a conversation with anyone at any time, basically, about creativity, living a creative life, how to create your life. I'll also have a discussion with anyone about branding and creating something unique in the world from what you're doing. I think there's a beauty in that and a freedom that comes with that makes it super powerful. As I think it's also very, very important in today's landscape,
right?
Because there are so many people trying to do it on their own, and jobs are just not as secure as they once were, and people are just not doing them. People seeing that they're not the road to where they want to go. And so in today's landscape in particular, being unique, creating a brand that's more than, I always say, if you're not a brand, you're a commodity. And there's a lot of truth in that. You don't want to be a commodity if you want to raise prices. You don't want to compete on price. You want to compete on a unique value offering. And so in today's landscape, it's that much more important.
Yeah, definitely. If we're looking back and we look back over your career so far, and you were to pick one defining moment for your career so far, what comes to mind?
Jeez. You know, for some reason, I think there's a lot. There are a lot. I have a lot of moments, but one of them was that pops to mind is working at the Sydney Opera House. I think that, you know, it's such an iconic location, and when I was there we were putting up this big show and doing this technical stuff and LEDs and 3D projections and all this stuff, and I was outside, and you're looking at this beautiful, iconic building, and over the bay there, the Sydney, I don't know what it's called, but it's the bay in Sydney. And I just felt like, this is cool. This is really cool. Like, I get to work at one of the most iconic, you know, locations in the world. And I have quite a few of those, so I'm pretty proud. I have several moments like that. So
congratulations.
Cool.
Where will Gil be in 3 years?
3 years. Probably going to be living part-time or a big chunk of my time in Costa Rica. So I'm a surfer. I love surfing. I follow the waves as much as I can, and I found a great little spot in Costa Rica where they have waves 340 days a year. As long as their internet gets better, I can do everything I need. I can do everything I need from my little hut in Costa Rica. So that's probably part of the plan.
Good. 3 years Costa Rica. I'm with it. So before I ask the final question, I just want to say thank you very much for being on the show. I definitely feel that class is in session. I mean, I learned a lot just from hearing you talk, little tidbits. I appreciate the tour you gave me. Extremely talented. I hear great things. And so I'm excited personally to talk to you some more and get to know you, because I can just tell, like, for creatives, your perspective is very unique. Your experience speaks for itself. And so I'm just excited to see kind of where you go personally, but also just to kind of get to know you a little better. So thank you for being on the show. We allow our guests to kind of take us home with any last minute words of wisdom or advice. So I'll say thank you again and take us home.
Well, last word would be, I'll just say thank you to you. I think the questions that you asked obviously brought out some interesting thoughts that I didn't, even think about before. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you're doing, because through this podcast, obviously you're promoting creativity. I know you're big on learning, and I think the search for knowledge is probably one of the highest, sort of forms of. I mean, like a guy. I'm going to use the word holy again. As a guy who's non-religious and doesn't feel anything sacred, I think the search for knowledge and the power of creativity are two things that might as well be sacred. So I appreciate what you're doing and bring to the world. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for being on the show.